Part 23. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 225. Right below this Iron Maiden, there is a Japanese warrior wearing big armor sitting on his knees. His hands are resting on his knees, his head is lowered, and there is a sword resting on the knife rest in front of him. A simple-looking samurai sword. I thought there would be more people able to come here, the warrior said in a deep voice. I thought there would be more people who could come here. Complex echoes came from all directions. No, this is not an echo, but the flesh and blood that makes up this huge dome repeating his words, those are the voices of men, women, old people, and children. They are wailing and crying, they are struggling desperately, but they cannot break free at all. They can only repeat what the person said over and over again, as if like a puppet controlled by him. Who are you? Kaylan asked. He had already picked up the gun in his hand and put the other person's head in the center of his aim. I am, from the Arezaka family. No, that is just a ridiculous identity, just an insect that relies on the weak body of humans to survive, and today, I will get rid of all this. And today, I will get rid of all this. The voices of countless victims were still repeating every word he said. You can call me, Ziyan. The warrior grabbed the knife and stood up. He is his, chief of the Arezaka family, the highest, his, controller of the consortium, and his, leader of the 6 martial arts, his, Ziyan. Victoria said to Kaylan said. In other words, this is the boss. Kaylan pressed down the trigger slightly. Oh, he may not be the boss yet. What's in that iron coffin is the real trouble. No. He's just, the things in there, Victoria slowly shook her head. At this time, Ziyan took a step forward, and Kaylan saw that his back was also filled with fleshy hoses. These hoses connected him to the Iron Maiden above his head and the entire flesh and blood dome. They are all connected together, they are a whole, and Ziyan is only a small part of this whole. Then he should be regarded as the brain of this thing, right? I wonder if the situation will get out of control if he is killed. Kaylan took a deep breath and pressed the index finger of his right hand down a little. He could already feel the stagnation coming from the trigger. This was truly on the verge of firing. As long as he applied any more force, the bullet in the gun chamber would be fired immediately. But keeping him alive, things will only get worse. The damage to Victoria's vocal device seemed to have gotten better. Although her speech was still intermittent, the harsh current noise had disappeared. However, the volume is also much lower than before. Kaylan noticed that her prosthetic limb was trembling slightly. This was not because of a malfunction, but because the power accumulated inside the machine was approaching its limit and was about to burst out. Unexpectedly, the task of solving the final boss will fall on the investigation team. Kaylan smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly. Perhaps Victoria herself did not expect that things would develop to this point, but Kaylan was not like that. The purpose was very clear from the beginning. He came to the East 9th District just for the voice coming from the depths of his mind. This voice, there was an irresistible magical power in it, guiding him step by step to this place. Kaylan felt like a moth flying into the flame, or a drug addict. It was an instinct engraved in the bone marrow. But until now, he has not noticed any hostility from the Iron Maiden. The hostility comes from the guy called Ziyan in front of him, but his will and that thing's will are not unified. Victoria was wrong, and Ziyan was also wrong. He and the thing in Iron Maiden were completely unrelated individuals. He was still the human being with a weak body and struggling to survive, as he said. This idiot, does he really think that by inserting a few tubes into his back, he can become one with the prehistoric species? Kaylan pulled the trigger. The roaring warhead instantly spanned a distance of 100 meters, shattering the gorgeously crafted armor that had no actual protective effect, tearing open Ziyan's skin and muscles, and opening a hole in his forehead bone. A hole about 2 centimeters in diameter was made. Subsequently, Ziyan's entire head exploded under the terrifying internal pressure, and gray-white brain matter and bright red blood spilled to the ground, mixed with armor fragments made of precious metals and with fine patterns. Bang! The katana slipped from his hand, and the headless body stood frozen in place, unable to take another step. I am God, I am the great God, I will not die, I cannot die. Ziyan's last roar was released through the flesh and blood, but soon, his remaining consciousness completely dissipated, the roar began to gradually weaken, and the consciousness that was originally controlled by him was completely liberated. Help me, save me. It's so painful, I'm in so much pain. Kill me. Please kill me, let me be free. Ah. Oh, save me, please. All kinds of screams and wails slapped Kayan's eardrums and nerves like huge collapsing waves. They came from the consciousness of the victims who were used as sacrificial animals and were imprisoned in that iron cave. Virgin among. I cannot be reconciled. An angry low roar overwhelmed all the whines. Under the disbelieving gazes of Kaylan and Victoria, Ziyan, who had lost his head, slowly bent down and picked up the samurai sword that had fallen on the ground. He is still alive. No, it's not Ziyan who is alive. Ziyan is already dead. His brain has been smashed, what controls his body is another consciousness, and that consciousness comes from there. Kaylan raised his head and looked at the Iron Maiden hanging in mid-air. I don't know how to explain this phenomenon to you. Kaylan continued, in the Chinese supernatural novels of the old era, some people who died in vain would turn into ghosts who harmed living people because of their deep obsession. The thing in front of me is probably similar to a ghost. Bah! 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 Victoria did not ask any more questions. Instead, there was the roar of the large-caliber hunting pistol in her hand. Those bullets opened blood holes the size of a bowl on Ziyan's body, but each blood hole lasted no more than half a second. The substances transported from the flesh tubes could repair the wounds on Ziyan's body almost in the blink of an eye. Victoria quickly emptied a bomb nest, and then, like a sharp arrow off the string, she went straight to Ziyan, straight to the Iron Maiden directly above him. Only by destroying the things inside can all this be ended. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 226. But just when Victoria was about to come into contact with the Iron Maiden in mid-air, a powerful shockwave spread directly centered on the Iron Maiden. Even Kaylan, who was dozens of meters away, was pushed away by the shockwave. After taking several steps back, not to mention Victoria, who was closest to the source of the shockwave, her body immediately lost her balance and hit the ground heavily. The headless Ziyan took out the long sword from its sheath and walked towards her step by step. Be careful! It's coming towards you, Kaylan shouted loudly, running forward and pulling the trigger, but for a moment, he forgot that the gun he was holding was the explosive Type 01. The gun's backseat was originally. The power is astonishing, and there is no accuracy at all when shooting while moving quickly. The bullets fired are almost 2 meters away from the closest shot of the headless purple flame. Victoria got up with some difficulty. As soon as she raised her head, she saw the headless corpse coming to stand in front of her, raising the katana high with both hands. The moment the sharp blade fell, Victoria's right prosthetic leg exploded suddenly below the knee. With the reaction force of the explosion, she forcibly distanced herself from Ziyan, allowing the opponent's knife to strike. Cut in the empty space. But Victoria, who had lost one leg, could no longer maintain her balance and fell to the ground again. Both her biological body and her mechanical body are on the verge of reaching their limits at this moment, especially after being injected with blockers. She can only control the prosthetic limbs by relying on the preset instructions in the control chip, which is much worse than the original use of neural signals. The control method was not bad at all. At this moment, it was extremely difficult for her to stand up again. Kaylan was still more than 20 meters away from Ziyan, while Ziyan was less than 3 meters away from Victoria, who was struggling on the ground. The magazine of the explosive Type 01 was empty. Kaylan put the rifle aside, pulled out the pistol and fired repeatedly. However, these bullets hit Ziyan's body and could only make a few blood holes the size of teacups. The blood hole had begun to heal as soon as it appeared, and just looking at the wildly growing granulation on the torn wound was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Ziyan. I'm shooting at you. Turn your head and look at me, Kaylan roared, but the other party ignored him at all. Instead, he stretched out his hand, pinched Victoria's head, and held it. Her body was lifted from the ground. The sharp knife penetrated directly through Victoria's chest, and even the hard artificial heart was torn into pieces by the blade. But Kaylan saw that Victoria's face showed an expression for the first time. She was smiling, she was laughing proudly. Her remaining left arm turned into 4 tough alloy chains, tightly binding Ziyan's body and the arm holding the knife together. Ha ha ha, hiss, ha ha, hiss, succeeded, ha ha ha, quickly, cut off. Victoria's laughter stopped suddenly. Ziyan's free hand had already let go of her head and dug out her 2 eyes. Victoria's eyes were not replaced with prosthetics. Along with the eyeballs, there were several tendons with blood. Kaylan finally ran behind Ziyan, threw away his pistol, and pulled out the 2 thermal energy war blades he picked up from Zhang's body from behind. Although Victoria couldn't finish her words, Kaylan already understood what she meant. Aha! With the knife in hand, Kaylan cut off all the fleshy hoses stuck in Ziyan's back. Black viscous liquid like petroleum spurted out from those tubes, and what shot out from Ziyan's body was a mixture of blood and black liquid. Ziyan's body began to twitch, and huge blood bubbles bulged under the skin. As these blood bubbles expanded and burst, its skin and muscles were rapidly melting. Before long, only one body was left. Headless skeleton. The alloy chain came loose from the frame, and Victoria, who lost her support, slowly slid down. She squatted on the ground in a kneeling posture, and a nearly half-meter-long blade was revealed from behind her back. Kaylan raised his head and glanced at the Iron Maiden who was still hanging in the air. Although Ziyan had been killed, this thing was beyond his ability to solve. Just the powerful shockwave alone was enough to kill him. Kaylan couldn't get close to the iron coffin at all, let alone that it might have other means of defense. Although the thing inside did not show hostility to Kaylan, this did not mean that it would not put up any resistance when Kaylan wanted to kill it. Unless, the holy word is used again. No, absolutely not. This idea was immediately rejected by Kaylan as soon as it came up. He didn't even dare to think about anything related to it, for fear of attracting the gaze of that distant existence again. That line of sight was much scarier than the thing in the iron coffin in front of him. The two were not on the same level at all. What's more, Kaylan was not sure yet what the price he would have to pay for using the holy word. Even if it is not vitality, it must be something whose value can be equated with life. No discovery does not mean that there is nothing. After using the holy word once, Kaylan felt that there were slight changes in some indescribable things, and that was the price he paid. As for the contents of this iron coffin, let them be handled by the Security Bureau and the garrison. Kaylan kicked open the headless skeleton and dragged Victoria outside the dome of flesh. He subconsciously put his fingers on the other person's neck to check his pulse. The next second he realized that Victoria's artificial heart had been strangled. Broken. It looks like he's dead. Kaylan shook his head with regret. He had an indescribable feeling about Victoria. If you want to say it's a friend, that's definitely not an enemy. Let's say it's an enemy. That's even more wrong. Although Kaylan had several conflicts with her before, at least they were on the same front regarding the East 9th District incident. But no matter what, she is a respectable warrior, a warrior who is determined to die for her ideals and beliefs. Victoria's torso has begun to show signs of decay, and those tissues were already dead when she was injected with the blocking agent. In fact, when fighting Ziyan, she had been dragging half a corpse in action, and now, the life force in the other half of the body has been completely drained. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 227. At least her body must be taken out. If people outside decide to use heavy weapons, I'm afraid there won't even be any bones left here. Just when Kaylan was thinking this, a weak electric current, the sound suddenly came from Victoria's throat. Are you still alive? Kaylan was stunned and said quickly, can you speak louder? I can't hear what you are saying. Hiss, connect, this wire, to, the, main cable of, the Ark. Victoria said intermittently. On the side of her neck, a hidden compartment popped up, and inside this hidden compartment was a data cable that could be stretched out. Connected to the main cable? What's the use of this? Can this save you? Kaylan held the interface of the data cable in his hand and asked, but, the main cable in East 9 District has been cut off. There's no way to connect to the outside world. Just do as I said, hiss. After Victoria said these last words, she fell completely silent. Main cable, what's the use of connecting the main cable? You are not a robot that has run out of power. Although Kaylan said this, he still dragged Victoria to a pillar containing a transformer and smashed open the box cover of the transformer. The Ark's main cables are buried in the basic structure of the ship's hull. However, as the Arezaka Tower is the core building of the East 9th District, the power supply system in the tower is directly connected to the main cables. There is basically no obstruction or loss in the connection. The power supply system of Arezaka Tower is basically the same as that connected to the main cable. The interface of this data cable is a standard C-type information transmission interface, but fortunately the wire is made of soft copper wire instead of optical fiber. After Kaylan cut off the interface, he connected the copper wire with the Arezaka Tower. The main power supply lines were twisted together. With a sting sound, a dazzling electric spark flashed out of the connection. The polymer wrapped around the copper wire was instantly scorched, and a pungent smell came from it. Isn't it screwed up? Kaylan thought silently, but Victoria asked him to connect this data cable to the main cable. The main cable is not a computer terminal, and there is no opening for the data cable connector to be plugged in and out. The only way to connect is through this primitive contact method. Moreover, the current in the main cable will only be greater, and the entire copper wire may be burned out. Kaylan couldn't figure out what Victoria's purpose was in letting him do this. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes passed. Victoria did not come back to life. Instead, small explosions came one after another from inside the transformer. Then, a faint black smoke came from the box. The inside came out. However, Ian's attention has now shifted to the Iron Maiden. He noticed that during the period just now, the scope of the flesh and blood dome seemed to have expanded a bit, and the fleshy dome connected to the Iron Maiden, the hose, has been reduced by almost 1/3. The thing inside may be coming out soon. He couldn't stay here any longer and had to leave immediately. Kaylan turned his head and met Victoria's empty eyes. Kaylan instantly jumped back a big step. He didn't know when Victoria stood up, but something seemed wrong with her current state. Could it be possible to bring a modified person back to life by turning on electricity? Kaylan felt that this was too outrageous. In contrast, he believed that Victoria had undergone a corpse transformation. Are you, Victoria? Kaylan asked tentatively. No, I'm not Victoria, she said, and her vocal system didn't look like it had been damaged before. Then who are you? I am the 21st member of the immortal crew, Hermaphroditus. I am responsible for taking over the cyborg body of Victoria Alner, High Commissioner of the Security Bureau, and am now preparing to carry out the destruction operation in the East 9th District." When she said this, she suddenly paused and said, "Please ask irrelevant personnel to evacuate this area immediately." Although Kaylan was very curious about the undead crew member Hermaphroditus mentioned, another piece of information in the other party's words was obviously more important. She said she wanted to destroy the entire East 9th District. Destroy? How to destroy it? Below the East 9 District is one of the 4 arc main power furnaces. "Aren't you worried about being killed by the explosion?" Kaylan said in shock. He has also thought of many ways to get rid of the things in the Iron Maiden, but he has never considered destroying the entire East 9th District. Only a madman would come up with such a plan, and through this plan people are also a bunch of lunatics, right? "I will separate the East 9th District module from the Ark, then launch it to the low Earth orbit of Alpha Star, and directly bombard it with the Ark's main gun," Hermaphroditus said. "Now, the countdown to distance module separation, there's still 15 minutes left." Kaylan was stunned. Although this plan was like a strong man cutting off his arm, it was indeed the safest way to deal with it, and it was also very feasible. As for the missing East 9 District, as long as the resources are sufficient, let alone one district, 10 more districts would not be built. Question: "Aren't you leaving yet?" Hermaphroditus said. Although Victoria's eyes had been gouged out by the purple flames, Kaylan always felt that the person who remotely controlled the prosthetic body was watching her at the moment. "Can you tell me what the undead crew will be?" "You don't need to know this yet, but I think you might become one of us in the future." As soon as she finished speaking, Kaylan felt the ground tremble violently. He looked up and saw that the air traffic tracks around Arezaka Tower were all broken into several pieces, and countless fragments fell towards the ground, making a deafening roar. The separation process of the East 9th District module has begun, and Kaylan knew that he couldn't ask anything more from this person, so he simply turned around and ran away. "Staying here is just to be buried with the things in the iron coffin. That's all." But what bothered him was, "I will become one of them in the future." What exactly does this sentence mean? Kaylan has never heard of the Immortal Crew Association. As for the superstructure of ARC, there are only 3 that the public knows: the Federation of Consortiums, the Supreme Command of the ARC Army, and the alliance determined by the vote of all the people of ARC. In addition to the parliamentary group, the supercomputer that controls the operation of the ARC, the core mastermind, also has part of the decision-making power. However, none of these organizations has the authority to decide on a plan such as abandoning the entire region module, and if they want to get together for a voting meeting, it will take at least a day just to convene the organization members. From this point, it can be determined that the authority of this undead crew club is probably completely superior to these 3 organizations. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 228. The guy just now actually said that he could join this crew in the future. Not only did this not make Kaylan feel happy, but it also filled his heart with doubts. Even if he was neutral during the Leviathan incident and the turmoil in the East 9 District, he has made a lot of contributions, and he knows very well that it is absolutely impossible to elevate his status above the big 3 just by relying on this credit. Could it be that this undead crew member has already discovered his secret? Trying to win over yourself this way? No. No, if this undead crew member really has authority over the 3 giants as he guessed, there is no need to win over a small person like himself. He only needs an order. He only had 2 choices, obedience and forced obedience. Oh, by the way, if his will was determined enough and his hands moved fast enough, he might still have a chance to commit suicide with a bullet. Perhaps it would be a good choice to find an excuse to escape to the wasteland before they did so, but Kaylan had no idea how long he could survive alone in the wasteland. Many of the exile organizations in the wasteland are estimated to have been controlled by the heretical section. After seeing what these guys did, Kaylan would rather cooperate with Ark than join their camp. Middle. But then again, assuming that the undead crew members already knew their secrets, then why did they neither contact themselves nor take any measures against themselves, and even let themselves leave the Ark to perform tasks outside? Is it possible? Aren't they worried about running away? If you think about it from another perspective, the first step Kaylan has to do is to put himself under house arrest. Even if his personal freedom is not restricted, at least he must always be under the surveillance of the Security Bureau, let alone running into the wilderness. Even if you leave home, you have to follow a large group of agents behind you. As for the conditions for cooperation, we can discuss this slowly. If we really can't reach an agreement, we will finally take coercive measures. If Fang Zhou really does this, Kaylan actually doesn't resent it. The reason why he chose to keep the secret was because he was worried that the upper management of ARC simply did not have the patience to negotiate terms, so they skipped this stage and fast-forwarded to the last step. After all, there are precedents for similar things, and all human beings are involved. When it comes to the fate of the future, ARC's official attitude has never tolerated the slightest bit of instability. Forget it, let's leave this place first, Kaylan thought in his heart. If the other party really wanted to take coercive measures against him, he would probably have done it long ago. It is impossible that there has been nothing happening until now. In this case, it is better to maintain the status quo and wait and see what happens. Kaylan quickly went down to the 22nd floor along the fire escape. Except for the elevator that he and Victoria took, the one with the highest stop among the other elevators was the one on the 22nd floor. As soon as he ran out of the stairwell, the elevator door opened automatically in front of him. Although the scene seemed a bit like a supernatural event, Kaylan was not surprised, since the undead crew member would pass through a cable if they could control Victoria's prosthetic body remotely. Opening an elevator door would be nothing to them. But if they had known that they were willing to help with this small favor, Kaylan would have gone directly to the 29th floor to wait for the rest. The elevator is coming up. He jumped directly into the car, and sure enough, even the button to return to the first floor had been pressed for him. The elevator door hadn't even been completely closed, and the entire car began to descend quickly, as if for fear that Kaylan would not be able to make it in time. It's like escaping from the East 9th District. These guys seem pretty reliable. When Kaylan rushed out of Arezaka Tower, the entire suspended structure of East 9 District had begun to collapse, and a large number of building debris continued to fall to the ground, creating a completely doomsday scene. Hey, this is trouble. Looking at the severely damaged block in front of him, Kaylan couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. If he was hit by something falling from above during the evacuation, it's probably hard to even leave a whole body behind. At this moment, he suddenly felt that the palm of his left hand seemed to be itchy, and he clenched his fist subconsciously. However, something unexpected happened. At this moment, the surrounding scenes all turned into gray and white, and those burning the flames and falling wreckage were all frozen there, and the whole world, including Kaylan himself, became a frozen scene. But Kaylan's consciousness was not frozen like his body. He observed all this in horror, but the next moment, the wailing sounds of countless men, women, and children rang in his ears, and every scream seemed like the heavy drumstick hit Kaylan's consciousness hard, and he was startled. Everything in front of him returned to normal, and the wailing sounds suddenly disappeared. How is this going? Kaylan looked around in surprise. At this time, the surrounding things had changed back to their original colors, and the wreckage that had been frozen in mid-air also fell to the ground. The scene just now gave him a feeling of déjà vu. When Kaylan used the holy word to kill Arezaka Yui, a similar situation occurred, as if the time of the entire world had stopped. Could it be that someone nearby is activating the holy word? But wait a minute, Kaylan seemed to suddenly remember something, and suddenly raised his left hand. The palm of his left hand was stained with a pool of leakage from those fleshy hoses. The black liquid that came out, and now, the black liquid has been almost completely absorbed by his palms, leaving only a little bit remaining on the surface of the skin. This thing should have been splashed on when he killed Ziyan not long ago. But what he didn't expect was that these things could be absorbed directly by human skin. Kaylan flicked his left hand a few times and didn't feel anything strange. But when he clenched his left hand into a fist and focused all his attention on it, the time stop phenomenon just now turned out to be another one. Appeared once. Along with it came the scalp-numbing wailing sound and the oppressive feeling like a mountain roar and a tsunami. Kaylan only felt a stab of pain in his head, and quickly got out of this strange state. Out. Isn't this the ability that the thing in that iron coffin has? Time stands still. If it can really stop time, wouldn't it be too outrageous, even as a person who has seen too much, a hunter of all kinds of weird and strange relics, Kaylan still feels that his worldview seems to be slowly collapsing. Shouldn't this ability only be mastered by gods in mythology? Is the thing in that Iron Maiden a god? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 229. But after thinking about it carefully, Kaylan felt that this ability did not seem to be considered as stopping time in the true sense. He had read a comic called JoJo's Bizarre Adventure before. The villain Dio's stand-in ability Smash Verido is to stop all time around him and allow himself to move freely during the still time, but when Kaylan activated this ability, even he himself became a part of the being stopped. The only thing that remained normal was his mind. In addition to time standing still, there is another situation that can also achieve a similar effect, thinking acceleration. This concept is not difficult to understand. For example, a person's thinking speed suddenly accelerated 10,000 times. The thinking process that originally took 1 second to complete was forcibly shortened to 1/10,000th of a second. From his subjective perspective to feel it, the flow of time in the outside world seems to be 10,000 times slower. When this multiple increases to a certain level, it will be no different from time stands still. But regardless of the nature of this ability, whether it is time stopping or thinking acceleration, in short, it is equivalent to giving Kaylan a pause button. When facing some unexpected situations, he can press this pause button and then cancel it after thinking about the best countermeasure. Although those seamless wails and indescribable sense of oppression will put a huge burden on Kaylan's spirit, in his current state, he can hold on for at least 3 to 4 seconds. In many cases, these 3 to 4 extra minutes of thinking are enough to change the outcome of an incident. For example, right now, Kaylan activated this ability again, and immediately, all the falling objects in the air were frozen there. Then, based on the falling points and order of these things, he drew a safety line in the block. Route. After breaking the stagnation, Kaylan rushed straight to a red trash can 30 meters in front of him on the right. He stayed next to the trash can for 2 seconds, waited until the half of the advertising board in front hit the ground, then jumped over the advertising board, and then turn right, bypass 2 hovercar charging piles, and enter a self-service supermarket. This is the first section of the journey. Although the track surface directly above the self-service supermarket has been broken, the deformation of the 2 main steel bars is not large, and it will not be able to be smashed down for a while. Kaylan smashed the window of the vending machine with the butt of his gun, took out 2 cans of sports drinks, pulled the tabs and poured them into his mouth. For Kaylan, who has used a variety of stimulant drugs, the small amount of effective substances added to sports drinks have basically no effect, but fortunately, this stuff contains a lot of sugar, which is just right for, replenish the energy and water your body needs. While drinking, Kaylan counted silently in his mind. After counting to 10, he threw down the can and kicked open the door on the other side of the self-service supermarket. Activate the ability to stand still, observe falling objects and dangerous routes, and delineate routes. The second time he used this skill, Kaylan's proficiency has been significantly improved, and he was relieved before his brain even felt the sting. He stopped and rushed towards the next target point. After so many stops and starts, Kaylan finally managed to escape to the edge of East 9 District without any danger. At this time, the side effects of this ability also appeared. In the last few times of use, the duration of each time was there was less than half a second left, and even without activating the skill, his consciousness began to become blurry, accompanied by a vague headache like a hangover, and his walking felt like a drunken man almost ran into a burning custom shop. Fortunately, when we walked to the outside, the overhead structures were completely damaged. Although the road conditions were terrible, at least we didn't have to worry about anything falling overhead. "Stop!" a shout suddenly came from the distance. Kaylan raised his eyelids with some difficulty and saw a group of garrison soldiers running towards the side with guns in hand. Kaylan simply sat down, threw the gun aside, and raised his arm towards the opponent. "Are you, Mr. Kaylan?" This group of soldiers had obviously seen Ian's photo and knew his identity. They quickly helped Kaylan, who was already in a semi-conscious state, and carried him to a folded bed. On the stretcher, an officer came up quickly and asked anxiously, "Mr. Kaylan, if you are injured anywhere, please tell us immediately. We will immediately prepare the medical department at the rear." "I'm not injured, I'm just exhausted." Kaylan waved his hand feebly. "The East 9 District is about to be separated. Please inform others to evacuate immediately. We have received the order." After saying that, the officer hesitated for a moment, but still asked, "Excuse me, Major Ashkani, who went in with you, was he sacrificed?" Kaylan didn't speak, just nodded silently. The officer let out an imperceptible sigh, and then led the soldiers to carry Kaylan away from the place. During the conversation with these soldiers, Kaylan learned that they were specially sent by their superiors to rescue him, and in the orders they received, he was the only one who needed to be rescued. As for the sacrificed Victoria, Ashkani, and Elisha and others did not mention it at all. Logically speaking, the military should not know that they had died. From this point of view, the team that came to rescue them should have been arranged by some undead crew. But what surprised Kaylan was that after the team sent him to a temporary camp set up at the border of East 9th District and East 8th District, they directly put Kaylan down. "If you feel any physical discomfort, the medical point is in the military camp. If you have other needs, you can directly contact me or any officer above the rank of lieutenant in the military camp. Of course, if you want to return to your residence or if you are going somewhere else, we will also arrange a pickup and drop-off vehicle for you," the officer said to Kaylan respectfully. Don't you need me to take notes? Or some other report or something? Just let me go like this." Kaylan felt a serious sense of unreality. Logically speaking, East 9 District, such a big thing happened inside. As the only survivor who came out alive, he had to be interrogated for days and nights. But this guy actually told himself that he could leave at any time. According to the standard, a record is required. The officer suddenly lowered his voice, but this time, the higher UPS specifically ordered it, so, Kaylan shrugged, "Special treatment. Ahem, that's pretty much what it means." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 230. In other words, I can do whatever I want, Kaylan confirmed to the officer again. That's more or less it. The higher-ups ask us not to interfere with your personal freedom, and to provide you with assistance as much as possible if you ask for it. The officer paused, and then added, "Of course, only within the capabilities of the assisting unit. Then the authority this gives me is really great. I can barely command the troops in this camp directly," Kaylan said. "Well, if you need command authority, I can apply to the higher UPS for you. If approved, I'm not interested in command, but I want to stay here and watch the separation process of East Ninth District. Ah, the officer was a little stunned. What's wrong? Isn't it possible? It's not impossible, it's just that when the separation operation reaches the third stage, our camp will have to retreat another 2 kilometers. Now this area will become a dangerous zone, and in principle no one is allowed to stay there. Here, the officer said with some embarrassment. Then I will retreat with you. Kaylan did not insist on staying here. For him, as long as he could see the separation and destruction process of East 9 District, he did this to confirm that he is the time stop ability that I just acquired related to the thing in the Iron Maiden, and whether the ability will disappear after this thing is destroyed by the Ark's main gun. This ability was brought to him by the black liquid that seeped into his palms. This was basically certain, but Kaylan had no idea what the relationship between this black liquid and the contents of the Iron Maiden was. But what made him even more strange was that all the effects he had suffered due to severe radiation were now eliminated on their own. When he was on the stretcher just now, the medical soldiers accompanying him had already drawn his blood once, and his various physical indicators they have all returned to normal, and the radiation concentration in the blood is almost the same as that of a completely healthy person. Could it be that that black liquid also has the function of repairing body damage? Kaylan couldn't help but think of Ziyan's terrifying recovery ability. Even the blood holes made by bullets could be restored instantly. In comparison, this was not an exaggeration. Mr. Kaylan, we will enter the third stage of the separation operation in about 30 minutes. If you have nothing else to do, you can come with us now. The remaining soldiers will also withdraw from this place after dismantling the camp facilities. The officer said to Kaylan. Okay, but I want to ask, am I the only one who came out of the East 9th District? Are there any other survivors? And, why did the reinforcements not arrive after we launched the signal flare? You are indeed the only survivor. As for the reinforcements, the officer said with a strange look on his face, actually, after you, 3 more investigation teams entered the East 9th District, but they also cooperated with the commander. The headquarters lost contact, then, after observing 3 orange signal flares rising deep in the East 9th District, the headquarters immediately organized a group of 450 elite garrison soldiers and 120 senior a commando team composed of Secret Service agents, but the officer hesitated to speak, as if he was having trouble thinking of a suitable adjective. But what? Kaylan asked. But, they encountered something very strange. The officer thought for a long time, and finally chose the word strange. Something strange? We thought the reinforcements were blocked. There was no blocking, the commando team did not encounter any enemies during the whole process, but they have been circling in the outer area of East 9th District. They can't find the way and can't get in at all. The officer's word order was a little confusing, but at least it was still there. He made it clear what he wanted to express. Lost, Kaylan was a little stunned. He never imagined that the delay in the arrival of reinforcements was due to getting lost. Even if the electronic navigation fails, you should have paper maps, right? A large army of several hundred people can actually. It's outrageous to get lost in such a handful of blocks. It's not that I'm lost, the officer waved his hands repeatedly, it's that he can't find the way in, on the outskirts of the East 9th District. Well, how should I put it? Probably some changes have occurred in the spatial structure. The entire block it has become like a maze, and even setting up beacons along the way is completely useless. The spatial structure has changed, Kaylan repeated the other party's words and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. You are Chinese, right? I remember that there is a special word in Chinese proverb to describe this phenomenon, called, what is it called? Yes, ghost hits the wall. That's it? Commandos and the others encountered a ghost beating the wall, the officer added. Ghosts hitting the wall, according to your description, it seems like this is indeed the case. Kaylan nodded, but why didn't we encounter the ghost hitting the wall? Moreover, when I escaped from inside, although those neighborhoods were severely damaged, but several main roads were completely unchanged, if the spatial structure had really changed, I might not be able to get out. I don't know this. The officer said helplessly. Probably when those blocks were damaged, the changed places were restored to their original state, just like the formations described in ancient military books same. Although this officer is a white man, he seems to have done a lot of research on ancient Chinese culture and can even explain things like formations. To say that the most famous of this type of formation is probably the Bagua formation set up by Zhuge during the Three Kingdoms period. However, in fact, the formation is not as magical as described in romance novels. It is at best a kind of arrangement. It's just a plan for deploying troops, even if the stone formation in the novel that can trap millions of troops really exists. When the level of modern science and technology completely overwhelmed that era, if you want to rely on such a maze of formations to defeat an army, it is simply impossible for a well-trained army to be trapped inside. But if the space structure has really changed, then the crushing side between technological levels will be reversed. For humans, most of those complex and exquisite space technologies still only exist in theory. On the other hand, if the heretical sect really masters the space technology left behind by the Alpha civilization, it can definitely be regarded as a dimensionality reduction strike for the humans on the Ark. Moreover, if they really master this technology, Ark will have no chance of winning. If nothing else, just open a portal and enter the core master brain, and the entire Ark will be paralyzed. What else is going on? Beat. From this point of view, the technology mastered by the heretical sect is only superficial, and it is possible that even they themselves cannot control it. But there is still a doubt in the whole matter. Why didn't Kaylan and his team encounter similar things? By the way, have the commandos heard any strange sounds? Kaylan asked the officer. Strange noise. This time, it was the officer's turn to look confused. It's a sound similar to wailing and sobbing. The recording equipment cannot collect it, but everyone's ears can hear it, and the content heard by different people is completely different. Kaylan described it in as much detail as possible. No, the officer said in a very affirmative tone. Although I am not a member of the commando team, many of my soldiers have participated in the commando team, and they have not heard any unusual sounds at all. No, Kaylan muttered, and he suddenly felt that whether it was the voice, the thought in his mind, or the so-called maze, everything seemed to be verifying one thing. It wants to let itself in, but everyone except itself is blocked outside. This does not refer to the people of the heretical sect, nor does it refer to Xian, but the thing in the Iron Maiden, which has a certain degree of self-awareness, and can spread this awareness and invade into human minds. The reason why Kaylan had such a strong desire to go in and have a look was entirely because it subconsciously induced Kaylan. And its purpose of seducing itself is to. Kaylan couldn't help but look down at his left hand. No traces could be seen on the palm now, but when he pressed it gently with his thumb, he found that there seemed to be a hard, cocoon-like substance inside. Things. This thing didn't exist before. When did it appear? Have you been parasitized? This thought suddenly shocked Kaylan into a cold sweat. He subconsciously put his left hand into his pocket and pinched the stone all. Nothing happened. Although he could feel the cocoon with his fingers, Kaylan couldn't feel any foreign body sensation, as if the thing was a part of his body. Kaylan really wanted to find a scalpel and cut open his palm to see what the thing was, but there were so many pairs of eyes around him still looking at him. If he was really parasitized by something, he would not be safe. What emergency measures will these soldiers take on themselves? By the way, do you have CR imaging equipment here? It's best if it's portable and can be operated by one person, Kaylan asked the officer. What do you want this for? I feel uncomfortable in my right wrist. I suspect the bone may be injured. I want to take a X-ray to check. Kaylan moved his right wrist and pretended to be uncomfortable. If it's just for taking pictures, there are them at the medical point here. I'll ask someone right away. The officer was interrupted by Kaylan before he finished his words. Let everyone in the computer room go out. I can complete the operation myself. You are not allowed to come in until I say yes. You do it yourself. Although the officer was very puzzled by Ian's request, in view of the order issued by his superiors, he still complied with Ian's request and took all the operators out, leaving only Kaylan and the machine in the room. Kaylan checked every corner of the room, then unplugged the network cables from the computer and X-ray machine. After setting the corresponding parameters and delay time, he reached his left hand under the machine. After the scan was completed, Kaylan returned to the computer and looked at the digital image displayed on the screen. In the palm of his left hand, there was a crystalline object the size of a rice grain parasitized. Crystalline object? Kaylan immediately thought of the ultra-pure crystal unearthed from Leviathan's body. Could this be the thing that the heretical sect cut out of Manstein's belly and was called a holy object by Yui Arezaka? Shouldn't that thing be in that iron coffin? How could it come into my own body? Moreover, judging from Manstein's autopsy report, that thing should have contained extremely powerful radiation. Manstein wrapped it in many layers with radiation-isolating materials but could not completely block the radiation. But now Kaylan didn't have any protective measures on his hands. Why didn't he feel even a little bit of radiation? He picked up the Geiger counter hanging on his waist and brought it close to his left hand. The machine did not sound, and the reading on the screen did not change at all. Could it be that during that ceremony, the nature of this thing changed? Not only is the radiation gone, but it also has the ability to freeze time. Wait a minute, Kaylan was suddenly startled. If the holy object had been transferred to his body, would the contents in the iron coffin only be an empty shell? And the immortal crew will not hesitate to abandon the things that will destroy the entire East 9th District, but in fact, it has already happened to them unknowingly. If they found out, would it be difficult for him to be thrown into low Earth orbit and take a shot from the Ark's main gun? This thing is a huge trouble. Kaylan took one last look at the image on the screen, then deleted all the data, and took another picture of his right wrist. He originally wanted to format the computer directly afterwards. He destroyed all the computers and X-ray machines with grenades, but doing so would easily attract unnecessary attention. Even Kaylan himself could not guarantee whether the people from the Security Bureau could recover from the pile of wreckage and debris. Record those images. He has already decided that when this matter is over, he will find a way to perform an operation to take out the crystal from his palm. Even if he loses the ability to freeze time because of this, it is better than letting such an unknown person. It would be better to keep the strange object in the body, not to mention that this thing may bring death to oneself. Kaylan printed out the film of his right wrist, then walked out of the computer room with a relaxed look on his face, and said to the officer waiting outside, "It looks like the bones are fine, it should just be muscle damage." "It's okay," the officer nodded repeatedly. "Mr. Kaylan, if you have nothing else to do, please retreat with us now. There are only the last 10 minutes until the third stage. P.S. Today I don't know why my right abdomen has been hurting for a day, and I feel very weak. I suspect it is appendicitis, but the pain doesn't seem to be as severe as appendicitis. If the condition worsens tomorrow, I may ask for leave to go to the hospital." Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 231. When Kaylan and the garrison troops withdrew to the rear base, the separation process finally entered what the officer called the third stage. Tens of thousands of large locks on the edge of the entire East 9th District were unlocked at the same time. Open, all power supply, gas supply, water supply, and information transmission pipelines are cut off and sealed, and the filling bolts at the border are retracted to both sides. Then, the dome directly above the East 9th District is opened, and 8 heavy transport ships cover the entire East 9th District. The module is hoisted into the air. The next fourth stage is to let the engineering meteorite on the suspended operating platform, install a large number of rocket thrusters and anti-gravity devices under the East 9th District module, and use the power of these things to send the entire module to Alpha Star of low Earth orbit. Seeing the entire block rising from the ground, Kaylan also felt a bit shocked in his heart. There is an unreachable gap between the Alpha civilization and what they left behind and the current level of human strength. This is a gap that is difficult to cross, and the only way for mankind is to fill this gap at a huge cost, and in this way to smooth out the strength gap between the two sides. This is true whether it is crashing into Leviathan's flagship or the East 9th Sector module launched into low Earth orbit. There is never a saying of too much is too little in dealing with such incidents, because as long as there is a wrong move, all humankind will face the risk of extinction. Kaylan decided that after he took out the crystal in his palm, he would find a way to get in touch with the undead crew member. This thing was too dangerous and could not be controlled by him alone. If it got out of control, not only would he not be able to survive, but he might also be buried with the tens of millions of people on the Ark. At that time, even if he is asked to hand over the thing, he won't have much objection. This thing can no longer be described as a hot potato, it is clearly a time bomb that may explode at any time, and its the power is enough to affect the entire Ark. But when he touched the palm of his left hand again, he was shocked to find that the hard flesh cocoon had disappeared, and the crystal wrapped in the flesh cocoon had also disappeared. This thing, can it still swim around in the body? This discovery scared Kaylan, but the problem is that he has no way to scan his whole body now, and he can't find out what the crystal is hiding in place. It seems that this problem can only be solved by Yvonne. After discovering that the crystal was missing, Kaylan became more determined to take it out of his body, although he still doesn't feel any discomfort. But if one day this thing goes to the heart or brain, it will be too late even if you want to operate. At this time, the separation operation in the East 9th District had just entered the last step of the fourth stage, ignition and launch. Everyone, be prepared for impact, the officer shouted loudly, and the soldiers wearing exoskeletons pulled up the protective panels one after another. The 4-meter-high and half-meter-thick composite protective panels protected the entire camp towards the East 9th District. They were all firmly blocked, and further back, a great wall-like metal wall rose directly from the ground, firmly protecting the residential areas bordering the blocks. "It's about to start a fire," the officer looked into the distance through the observation window on the protective panel. "All unprotected personnel should hide inside the building." Along with a deafening roar, a wave of air directly hit the thick protective plate, and hundreds of light blue flames were sprayed out from under the entire East 9th District module and began to rise at an accelerated rate. The 8 heavy transport ships responsible for towing had already untied their slings and moved away to both sides. By the way, such a large irregular living module, without the protection of the shell, will disintegrate during the flight, right? Kaylan shouted at the officer at the highest volume. Only in this way, the other party could hear what he's saying. "Don't worry, if there is disintegration, the falling fragments will be cleared by Ark's anti-aircraft firepower and the guards fleet. As for Ark's main gun, it has always been locked on the Arazaka Tower in the center." The East 9th District module quickly rose to an altitude of 1,000 meters. Debris continued to fall from the module. However, before these things could fall on the Ark below, they were already shot from all directions in the air. The laser beam vaporized instantly. Not long after, the East 9th District module turned into a speck of light within the field of vision, and with a burst of buzzing, a blazing white light beam thicker than the diameter of the Arazaka Tower base chased after it. In an instant, the entire night sky also it is reflected like daylight. At this moment, Kaylan suddenly felt a stab of pain all over his body, and his legs almost gave out and he fell to the ground. Fortunately, everyone around him was looking up at the beautiful explosion scene in the sky, and no one noticed him. Strange. Is this because the thing in the Iron Maiden was destroyed? causing a chain reaction. Kaylan lowered his head, clenched his right fist, and once again activated his mind to activate the time stasis ability. Suddenly, the surrounding people, everything turned into black and white, and even the gorgeous fireworks blooming in the sky turned into a still picture. The ability still exists, but Kaylan suddenly has a completely different feeling from the previous times when he released his ability. The shackles imposed on his body seem to have been weakened a lot. He tried to move the little finger of his left hand, and saw that the top joint of the little finger was slightly bent. The movement was less than half a centimeter, and the time stasis was lifted. But his fingers did move. Before the time stagnation is lifted, Ian's breathing couldn't help but speed up a little. He realized that this ability was definitely not thinking acceleration, but a genuine time stopping. Moreover, as long as certain restrictions can be released, he can move during the stop time. Why is there such a change? Is it because of the disappearance of the crystal, or because the Iron Maiden was completely destroyed? Or is it related to both? Okay, after watching the fireworks, I think I have to go. Can you lend me a car? Kaylan tried his best to suppress the surprise in his heart and said to the officer calmly. Where are you going? We can send someone to take you back, the officer said hurriedly when he heard Kaylan said he was leaving. No, I can drive by myself. I don't like the feeling of being surrounded by people like they are protecting animals. Kaylan pointed to a light armored hover vehicle parked in the camp. I think this vehicle is good. Can you lend it to me for 2 days? Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi San. Chapter 232. Of course, but do you really not need our escort? Although the East 9th District module has been destroyed, there are probably remnants of the heretical sect lurking in the surrounding areas. I've even visited their lair in the deepest part of East 9th District. Do you think I still care about a few small fish and shrimps? Kaylan patted the holster on his waist, and then pointed towards the officer, held out his hand. Then, well, after you go back, General Maginot will find time to contact you. I hope you will not leave the Ark within a week at least. Within a week? Then I shouldn't go out. I earned a lot of commissions from the last 2 tasks. I shouldn't be able to spend all the money in a while. Kaylan frowned slightly. He was prohibited from leaving the Ark within a week. Is this right? Are you planning to take any action on yourself? But judging from the officer's tone, this request didn't seem to be mandatory. Even if he insisted on going outside, they probably wouldn't stop him. After getting a positive answer, the officer didn't say anything else. Instead, he simply found the keycard of the armored hover vehicle and handed it to Kaylan. Kaylan got into the hovercar, and the first thing he did was to remove the recording camera in the car, and then unplugged the power cord of the onboard wireless communication device. Although this thing allowed him to get some information from the military's dedicated communication channel, useful information, but it will also record and upload Ian's communication content. Even if he is using his own mobile phone, this device will also monitor the communication content. Then, Kaylan took out his cell phone and made a call to Hound. As soon as the call was connected, the Hound's voice came out of the receiver. Hello? Hello? Hello. Is that Kaylan? It's me. It's me. You're not missing any arms or legs, are you? Although Maginot has told me that you escaped from the East 9th District, he didn't say whether you came out vertically or horizontally. The Hound spoke as fast as a barrage of cannons. And the background sound seemed to be mixed with the shouts of 2 big men, Jolajitu and Leighton. I'm fine, just some scratches. How is the situation over there? Kaylan asked. We have left the hospital and are now staying in a safe house provided by that guy from Maginot. I will send you the address via encrypted text message later. By the way, the Hound's voice suddenly stopped. Have you found Liao Zilang? No, Kaylan whispered. The situation in East 9th District is very complicated. I have no chance to find anyone. Kaylan thought for a while. but finally did not tell the Hound what Yui Arezaka said, the outcome was already doomed. If the Hound knew that Liao Zilang might have been subjected to such inhumane and cruel experiments, it would only be the pain of a hyperplasia. Forget it, actually, I also know that after things develop to that extent, the chance of him surviving is already very, oh, let's not talk about this. I heard that the entire East 9th District was just launched to a nearby place. We went to the Earth's orbit, and then received a shot from the Ark's main gun, so is this matter settled? That's more or less it? I'll come back and tell you the specific details in person, Kaylan said. Yeah, that's fine. Also, what's going on with the engagement? Hound suddenly changed the subject and asked about Zofia. If he and Zofia were engaged in the past, this matter would definitely be on the morning news of the Ark the next day. After all, the heir of a large consortium chose to marry an unknown relic hunter. This is in the eyes of the public. It's like a fantasy. To use a buzzword on the internet, it's a melon big enough to attract the comments of a large group of people who eat melons. However, the news of the engagement had just been announced, and then more outrageous news appeared: a power outage affecting the entire Ark, the isolation and blockade of the East 9th District, the rebellion of the entire Arezaka Consortium, and the kidnapping of a large number of innocent people. These news are simply a comparison. And even bigger news, as for the news of Kaylan and Zofia's engagement, has long been left behind. However, as K. Ian's teammates, Hound, and the others will definitely pay attention to this information, especially Hound. He had joked several times before that Zofia might have fallen in love with Kaylan, but this time the joke came true. He himself must have been severely shocked. This matter may be troublesome to say, Kaylan muttered. Actually, Zofia came to me to fight against the Arezaka Consortium, but now that the entire Arezaka Consortium is gone, I think the existence of this engagement should be nothing. It's necessary. Why is it unnecessary? Hound immediately yelled on the other end of the phone. If she really inherits the Soma Consortium in the future, do you know what this means? Stop it, I don't want Zofia to be tied to her chariot. She and I just have a cooperative relationship, and I won't sell my life to her. Kaylan, what are you thinking in your head? Who the hell asked you to sacrifice your life? This is obviously giving you a super beautiful wife for free plus money that you will never use up for the rest of your life. Do you think this is a good thing? Anyone can bump into it. Hound couldn't help but cursed. Let's talk about this matter now. I still have a big and fatal problem that I haven't solved yet, Kaylan sighed and said. Unless the crystal matter was solved, he would not be able to concentrate on other things. A fatal, big trouble. The Hound on the other end of the phone was stunned for a moment, and then his tone suddenly became serious. What's wrong? It's not convenient on the phone. Let's say it in person. I'm driving right now. You can send me your address and I'll come over. Okay, Hound said and hung up the phone. Within a few seconds, Kaylan received the address he sent. The safe house was not far away, just in the East 7th District, and could be reached within half an hour. Then, Kaylan dialed Maginot's number again. Instead of waiting for the other party to call, he might as well take the initiative to call. Although Maginot may have been extremely busy during this period, Kaylan didn't mind calling again at all. Add more trouble to him. The call was quickly connected, and the person who answered the phone was not a secretary or messenger, but Maginot himself. From this, it can be seen that his number should be his personal contact information. Hello? Is it Kaylan? It's me, Kaylan responded. General Maginot, there's something I want to ask you. What is it? As long as it can be answered, I can tell you. Did you know that the undead crew would? The other end of the phone fell into silence for half a minute. Just when Kaylan was about to ask again, Maginot finally spoke. This question, I can't answer you, I don't have the authority, but since you already know their existence, they will contact you sooner or later. In addition, you must not tell other people about this matter, as doing so will harm others. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 233. Even the hounds don't know, Kaylan asked. Nick's military rank before retiring was only senior colonel. To have access to secrets at this level, you have to be a general at the beginning. To be honest, even I don't know much. Maginot's tone. Quite nervous, he seemed reluctant to discuss this topic with Kaylan. Then what should I do if I have trouble with them? No, you must not take the initiative to go to them. If there is really a need for direct contact, they will send an agent to come to you. Agent? Is it similar to the way of remotely taking over Victoria's prosthetic body? Haven't any of you seen the members of the undead crew with your own eyes? Don't say it's me. Even my superiors' superiors, have only had contact with agents at most. As far as I know, the crew has existed for at least hundreds of years, but no one has ever. I have seen the true face of any of them. Oh damn, I shouldn't have said these things to you. You'd better forget what you just said, it would be better for you and me, Maginot said. No one has seen their true faces? Are the members of this crew guild really immortal? If it is really as the name of this crew guild says, then they have lived for hundreds of years, Kaylan said with some suspicion. Hey, stop asking. I'm begging you. Maginot shouted as if he was frightened. Stop talking about this. If you keep talking, something will really happen. Okay, by the way, your officer said you would call me later. If anything happens, you can tell me here. Kaylan held the joystick of the hovercraft in one hand and his cell phone in the other. Said, in order to allow the driver to raise a gun and shoot, the military's vehicles have been specially modified, and there is no problem with one-handed operation, and this vehicle has a military license plate. Even if he is captured by the camera, it will be completely. Don't worry about fines. Actually, it's nothing. Don't worry, let's talk about it next time. I still have a lot of aftermath matters to deal with, so I'll hang up now, Maginot said as if he had been granted amnesty, and hurriedly went to the toilet. Hang up the phone. Hearing the busy beep sound coming from his cell phone, Kaylan couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Judging from Maginot's words, he seemed to be very afraid of this organization called the Immortal Crew Association. That's right, it's fear, not awe. Perhaps even Maginot himself didn't notice that there was this extremely obvious fear in his tone. But if the members of the crew are really immortal, this fear is not difficult to understand. In Ian's view, such creatures can no longer be considered human beings, but if this assumption is true, doesn't it mean that the supreme leader of mankind is actually a group of monsters? If this news leaked out, it would definitely cause chaos. No wonder Maginot was so nervous. But what makes Kaylan more concerned is that Maginot mentioned that this Undead Crew Association has existed for hundreds of years. In other words, the Immortal Crew Association already existed when the Ark was still in the interstellar drifting stage. Could it be that at that time, humans had already mastered the technology of immortality? Or is it just using hibernation technology to freeze people and then revive them hundreds of years later? But if this group of people really has been frozen in the dormant warehouse for hundreds of years, the Big Three will definitely take away all the power of the crew during this period, and even the underlying programs of the core mastermind may be changed. However, Kaylan thought of a possibility, which is to wake up one or several dormant members every once in a while, and let the awakened person take power as the representative of the Undead Crew Association. But the problem is that doing so not only does it make no sense, but it also cannot be considered true immortality. Since the Immortal Crew Association can become the highest authority of Ark, the members of this crew association must not be ordinary people, but doing so is equivalent to using everyone as disposable consumables. After removing sleep time, everyone's actual lifespan will not actually change much. What's more, if it is implemented in this way, it will only take a few hundred years. When the last awakened dormant crew member dies, the undead crew will be completely extinct. If they use the method of absorbing new members to continue the existence of the crew association, what is the essential difference between it and the big three organizations? It feels like it doesn't make sense no matter how much I think about it. Unknowingly, Kaylan had driven the car to the block where the safe house was located. He stepped on the brake, and then pressed the horn several times rhythmically according to the signal given to him by the hound. Not long after, a tall, thin man wearing a dark gray sweatshirt and a hood swung out from an alley on one side. One side of his sweatshirt was sleeveless, exposing his entire shiny metal arm. An exquisitely crafted small wine bottle was flipped flexibly between a few mechanical fingers. "Ivan," Kaylan jumped out of the car, "I've never seen you play with this hand before, but I didn't expect you to be so skilled with this new arm." Of course, Ivan suddenly showed a strange smile. "Natasha is also quite satisfied, but she always urges me to wrap it in a layer of bionic skin, but I feel that leaving the mechanical structure exposed that's cool enough." As he spoke, Ivan flicked his little finger, and the wine bottle flew directly towards Kaylan. Kaylan grabbed the wine bottle and was about to twist the cap, but he suddenly remembered something and looked up at the other person. "Isn't this still medical alcohol?" "No, feel free to drink," Ivan said. Kaylan unscrewed the lid, and immediately, a mellow and fragrant fragrance floated out from inside. He took a sip. The wine was indeed good, but for him, the alcohol content was too high. After returning the flask to Ivan, Kaylan turned around, closed the car door, and stuffed the keycard into his pocket. "Are Asano, Akira and the others okay?" Laugo said before that they were all seriously injured. "It's all flesh injuries. It's just minor problems. If the bones and internal organs are fine." Ivan raised his head and took a sip, then led Kaylan into the alley. The safe house that Maginot arranged for the hounds and the others is a warehouse used to store emergency food reserves. Very few people usually come here, unless there is a sudden food crisis on the Ark and these emergency food reserves are needed. The warehouse door will be opened. The door that Ivan took Kaylan through was opened in an abandoned underground pipe 50 meters away from the warehouse. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 234. To be precise, the basement of this warehouse is the safe house. However, although it is a basement, the actual area is larger than the warehouse above. It has all kinds of living and entertainment facilities, all the necessary defense methods, and even a small arsenal. As soon as Kaylan walked into the safe house, Hound and the others couldn't wait to gather around him, asking about things in the East 9th District. Apart from the matters concerning the immortal crew, the Holy Word and the Crystal, Kaylan did not hide much. As for the death of Yui Arazaka, it was directly attributed to gene collapse. "That Baichi, it's too easy for her to die like this," Hound said bitterly, "but Victoria, this bitch, is really a man." "Although I think your description is not good for women," Kaylan sighed, "but she is indeed a respectable warrior. It's a pity that such things will not be known to the public." Hound shrugged. "In the hearts of most people, the Security Bureau is still a notorious spy organization. I think those agents who join the job should also have this awareness." After Kaylan finished speaking, he suddenly turned to Ivan and asked, "How is the situation at the clinic being handled?" "It's still a mess. The arrows used by the attacker before contained an explosive arrow, which was no less powerful than a defensive grenade." Ivan shook his head. "I need an X-ray equipment." "Ivan, is there any way you can get it?" "X-ray? What do you want that thing for?" Ivan asked in confusion. "Do you remember that guy Manstein?" "Of course I remember. I heard from Maginot that that guy deceived us and brought out a certain treasure hidden in his stomach. In the end, it was found by the people of the Arazaka Consortium." The Hound's tone was full of disdain. I say, the death of that greedy and stupid guy was not unjust at all. If it weren't for him, what happened in East 9th District would not have happened at all. But that thing is in my body now. That thing? Which thing? Wait, you mean, the thing that Manstein brought out? Yeke-lan nodded with a wry smile. People from the heretical sect seem to regard this thing as a sacred object, but I don't even know what it is. How did this thing get into your body? Did you eat it? The hound's eyes widened, staring at K-Ian's belly. No. It was when I was fighting Ziyan. K-Lan stretched out his left hand, but now there were no traces on his palm. The black liquid that spurted out from the flesh tube was contaminated. On my hand, I think it was at that time that the thing was mixed with the liquid and got into my palm, but the problem is that I didn't feel anything at the time, and no wound was found on my palm. In your palm, the hound grabbed K-Ian's palm without hesitation, and carefully pressed K-Ian's palm a few times with his rough fingertips. Why can't you touch anything? This is the thing that bothers me the most. I originally planned to have an operation to take out the thing after it comes out, but it seems to be wandering around in my body. Now I don't know where it has gotten into. That's why I decided to do a full body X-ray scan. Although my clinic is unavailable now, I know a friend at this time, Ivan said. Like me, he is also a part-time hunter with a private clinic. He just went out to explore the ruins these days. In his clinic, in addition to X-rays, there are also all equipment such as CT. But he's out. How do you get into his clinic? Hound asked. He entrusted me with the care of his clinic before he went out this time. This is the key card. Ivan took out a card from his pocket. He posted my contact information on the door of the clinic, although it is usually normal at this time. No patients will go to him for treatment, but if there are patients with injuries or relapses, then this preparation will come in handy. Ivan flicked the card and continued, after all, as a colleague who often exchanges medical skills and research experiences with him, I am the person who knows the most clearly about the conditions of the patients under his hands other than him. Instead of finding another doctor, you might as well come to me. Okay, take K-Lan there quickly. Don't let that thing get into trouble when it gets to some vital place that can't be removed by surgery, Hound said hurriedly. Soon, K-Lan and Ivan returned to the car, followed by Natasha as their assistant. According to K-Ian's plan, after scanning the location of the crystal, if the conditions for surgery are met, then perform surgery immediately to avoid long nights and nightmares. The clinic where Ivan's friend works is located in the North 4th District. In order to reduce the possibility of being tracked, K-Lan and the others first stopped by the Raven Black Market where anonymous credit memory cards can be used for transactions. The three of them split up. During the operation, Ivan and Natasha bought a batch of tools and consumables needed for the operation, while K-Lan bought an inconspicuous second-hand hovercar. In the words of a hound, that military vehicle is too conspicuous. Even if K-Lan turns off the communication equipment and positioning device, every time he drives through an intersection with surveillance cameras, the license plate number will be recorded, and he will follow the clues to investigate. Going down, K-Lan and the others can easily find out where they went and what they did. There are no secrets at all. Leaving the armored hovercraft on a side road in the neighborhood near the Raven Black Market, K-Lan and the other three drove their new cars to the clinic in the North 4th District. As Ivan said, the door of the unoccupied clinic was closed. There was a notice on the door stating that the business was closed, and at the end of the notice, Ivan's contact information was left. You have to hurry up. Ivan opened the door of the clinic with the key card. If that thing can swim around in the body, it most likely has entered your blood vessels. If it enters the heart with the blood, that would be a big trouble. In fact, the heart is not the worst. If it doesn't work, just cut out the entire heart and replace it with an artificial substitute. But if it gets into the brain, there is no substitute for the brain. But when Ivan used X-rays and CT scans of K-Ian's whole body, he found that there was no foreign matter found in Ian's body at all. In other words, it is missing. Kaylan stood beside Ivan, looking at the image on the screen, and couldn't help but frown. No, there is another place that I haven't looked for. Ivan shook his head solemnly. It may be hidden in your digestive system, mixed with food residues and feces. From now on, you have to fast. After a while, I will conduct a detailed examination with a gastroscopy and colonoscopy. If you can't find it this way. Ivan did not continue, but the conclusion was self-evident.